Have you ever reminded your child 5 times to put on their shoes, and nothing happens? And by the 6th time, you end up yelling? I've been there. For a long time, I believed that being a mom meant having to constantly remind, push, and control. Until one day, I realized something, a little painful, every time I yelled. My child wasn't learning discipline. They were just learning to wait until I lost my patience. One night, after my child had gone to bed, I sat in silence and asked myself, why do I have to remind my child about every little thing? Why can't they just do it on their own, without waiting for me to say it? Or worse, waiting until I yell. I started reading, learning, and digging deeper. Why is it that Japanese children, just 6 years old, can walk to school alone, clean their classrooms, and take responsibility without being constantly reminded? And then, I came across something that completely changed the way I parent. Today, I want to share with you the 4 pillars of Shitsuke, a Japanese approach to self-discipline. It doesn't rely on yelling, rewards, or threats. It's rooted in neuroscience and in how children actually learn to self-regulate. Welcome to Mindful Parenting, where we help parents raise emotionally wise, confident, and well-behaved kids through mindful, science-based parenting. Let's begin. I used to think, maybe my child was just being lazy, or maybe they just weren't obedient enough to do things on their own. But after spending some time learning and reflecting, I realized something important. Obedience and self-discipline are 2 completely different things. Obedience is when a child does something because I'm standing there reminding, supervising, even counting, 1, 2, 3. Self-discipline is when they do it because something inside them knows it needs to be done even when I'm not around. Neuroscience also shows that when a child is constantly yelled at, pressured, or rushed, their brain shifts into survival mode, and the part of the brain responsible for self-regulation almost completely shuts down. So if a child isn't cooperating, it's not because they're being defiant, and it's not because they're refusing to listen. It's simply because their brain is too overwhelmed to learn what they're supposed to do. And then I started asking myself, if yelling doesn't work, how can my child truly learn self-discipline? I started exploring and comparing different parenting approaches from around the world. And along that journey, I came across a Japanese word that really made me pause and reflect. Shitsuke. Put simply, it means teaching the body how to self-regulate, not through power, not through control or force, but through things that are much gentler and far more meaningful. The environment around the child, the daily routines they follow, the calm presence of the adults in their life, and the belief that the child is capable of learning to self-regulate. What I love most is this: Shitsuke isn't something complicated or out of reach. It's built on 4 clear pillars, and any parent can begin starting with the smallest things. So where do we begin when it comes to teaching self-discipline? Does it require complex techniques or special tools? Not at all. We start with the simplest, most familiar thing, yet it holds a quiet power to shape the way your child functions each and every day. That is, Pillar 1. Routine. Giving your child's brain a map to follow. Back then, every morning I felt like a broken alarm clock. Brush your teeth, get dressed, come on, eat your breakfast, put your toys away. I kept repeating myself over and over, but my child still wouldn't do it right away. I thought I was helping my child, but in reality, I was taking over the job their memory was supposed to do. Researchers have found that young children aren't great at processing scattered commands, but they're very good at learning through repeated sequences of actions. In Japan, children don't act because they're told. They act because they're familiar with a clear, consistent routine. So I started with something very simple. I created a consistent morning routine: brush teeth, get dressed, eat breakfast, pack the bag, put on shoes. No reminding, no rushing. I simply let the routine lead the way. In just 1 to 2 weeks, I was saying less, my child was doing more, and everything at home felt so much calmer. It wasn't because my child had suddenly behaved better. It was because their brain finally had a map to follow. Once children have a clear routine to follow, The question becomes what actually makes them want to do things, instead of just doing them to get it over with. That brings us to the second pillar, responsibility. Helping children feel that they can do it. In Japan, children are given small tasks that carry real meaning. At age 3, they carry their own bag. At age 5, they fold their clothes. By age 7, they can prepare a simple breakfast. It's not about making them advanced early. It's about helping them feel, I'm capable, I'm trusted. I also started letting my child help around the house, starting with the smallest tasks. It didn't have to be fast or perfect. All that mattered was helping them feel that they could do it. And I realized something. What changed wasn't the productivity. It was the look in my child's eyes every time they finished something. Children deeply need to feel capable. And once they believe they can do it, discipline is no longer something imposed from the outside. It becomes a source of pride from within. But responsibility alone isn't enough. There were still moments when my child lost their temper, whined, or completely melted down. So how do we help children stay calm? What helps them stay balanced on the inside? The answer, it turns out, wasn't in my child, it was in me. And that's exactly what the third pillar of Shitsuke awakened in me. Modeling calmness. I used to think that if I wanted my child to be serious, I had to be strict. If I wanted my child to be quick, I had to rush them. But the truth is, children borrow their parents' nervous system to learn how to regulate their own. If I'm tense, my child becomes tense. If I raise my voice, their brain shuts down. But if I stay calm, they begin to settle themselves. I started practicing, pausing for a few seconds before reacting, relaxing my shoulders, speaking a little more slowly, and taking deeper breaths. And the amazing thing was, my child began to change just by following my lead. No harsh words, no complicated techniques. My child wasn't being difficult. They were simply syncing with my emotional rhythm. When I learned to stay calm, my child started to self-regulate. But there was still one lesson I had to go deeper with, and practice over and over again. It was learning how to let go at the right moment. Because sometimes, what a child needs most isn't help. It's just enough space to figure things out on their own. Mimoru. Observing from a distance. So your child has the chance to self-correct. This is the final pillar. And honestly, the hardest one. Because a mother's instinct is to step in the moment her child starts to struggle. But the Japanese have a deeply thoughtful approach. Observe from a distance. Don't intervene too early. Don't fix things for the child right away. Because if I'm always jumping in, always correcting, always doing it for them, then my child never gets the chance to build the skill of self-regulation. I started practicing, waiting for my child to realize they forgot something. Waiting for them to come up with their own solution. Waiting for them to fix their mistakes through their own effort. At first, it was really hard, but little by little, I began to see something beautiful unfold. My child started finding their own solutions. They began taking responsibility for their actions. And they developed an inner compass to guide their behavior. And I realized, sometimes, doing nothing is actually the most powerful way to teach a child. Observing without stepping in sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest lessons for many parents. Because our instincts constantly tell us to jump in, fix it, help right away. But in many Japanese families, this practice is part of daily life done with calm, patience, and quiet trust. There was one small moment, but it perfectly captured this approach in an ordinary Japanese household. A little boy, around 4 years old, was having breakfast with his family. As he reached for his cup of water, he accidentally knocked it over. Water spilled across the table and dripped onto the wooden floor. The interesting thing was, no one in the family rushed over in a panic. No one said, "Oh no, look what you did." No one scolded or complained. The little boy looked up and glanced around. His father calmly continued sipping his tea. His mother quietly kept eating her breakfast. There were no disapproving looks, no harsh words. Just a quiet, safe space for the boy to notice what had happened. A few seconds later, he calmly got up from the table, walked to the kitchen, grabbed a small towel, came back, and wiped up the spilled water on his own. No one told him to. No one stepped in to help. No one clapped or praised him. Because in that home, taking responsibility was simply normal. This is the essence of Mimoru in Japanese parenting: observing, without stepping in too quickly, trusting, without needing to control. And it's in those very moments, when no one fixes things for the child, that they learn the deepest lessons in responsibility and self-regulation. As I came to understand these 4 pillars, I realized, Shitsuke isn't a parenting trick. It's not some secret method only the Japanese know. It's the science of how children develop self-discipline from within. Especially with strong-willed children, they're not actually resisting discipline, as many people assume. They're reacting to the feeling of being overly controlled. But when adults give them the right kind of autonomy, with clear boundaries, without force, those very same children often become the most self-motivated, independent, and responsible ones. And it's truly beautiful to see a child who can be self-motivated, independent, and take responsibility for their own actions. But behind that, there is always a mother quietly laying the foundation, day by day, a mother patient enough to wait for her child to self-correct, calm enough to lead by example, and trusting enough to give her child the space to grow in their own way. But I also know that we don't always have the energy to show up that way. So if you're feeling tired of having to remind your child all day long, like you're the engine dragging the whole family forward, and sometimes wondering, am I doing something wrong, or is it my child? Then let me just say this to you: you're not doing it wrong. You're not failing. You're simply learning a new way to be a mother, one that's deeper and more lasting. And you don't have to change everything overnight. You just need to start with the one pillar that feels most right for you and your child right now. Discipline isn't something we force onto our children from the outside. True discipline is something they build from within, when they are understood, guided, and empowered in the right way. If something in today's video resonated with you, if you're also on the journey to parent with less control and more connection, leave a comment with the word Shitsuke, so I know you're here, walking alongside me, and choosing a path of parenting that is mindful, meaningful, and sustainable day by day. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next video.